3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone, you are watching the 𝐷𝐸𝐴𝐚𝐦𝐿 YouTube channel, and today in this video I am going to show you top 5 best underrated FPS games for low-end PCs, which you probably never heard of. All the 5 games in this list can be played on a computer with at least 2 GB of RAM, so before we just get started, I want you to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe the channel. So now let's get started. On the number 5 spot we have the BioShock Infinite. BioShock Infinite is a first-person shooter video game, developed by Rational Games and published by 2K Games. It was released worldwide for the Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and OS X platforms in 2013, and a Linux port was released in 2015. Infinite is the third installment in the BioShock series, and though it is not immediately part of the storyline of previous BioShock games, it features similar gameplay concepts and themes. Rational Games and creative director Ken Levine based the game's setting on historical events at the turn of the 20th century, such as the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, and based the story on the concept of American exceptionalism, while also incorporating influences from more recent events at the time such as the 2011 Occupy movement. The game is set in the year 1912 and follows its protagonist, former Pinkerton agent Booker DeWitt, who was sent to the airborne city of Columbia to find a young woman, Elizabeth, who has been held captive there for most of her life. Though Booker rescues Elizabeth, the two become involved with the city's warring factions, the nativist and elite founders that rule Columbia and strive to keep its privileges for white Americans, and the Vox Populi, underground rebels representing the underclass of the city during this conflict. Booker learns that Elizabeth possesses strange powers to manipulate tears in the space-time continuum that ravage Columbia, and soon discovers her to be central to the city's dark secrets. The player controls Booker DeWitt throughout the game, eventually working with the AI-controlled Elizabeth. Like previous BioShock games, the player uses a combination of weapons, clothing called gear that offer unique attributes, and psychokinetic powers granted through vigors. Elizabeth's powers can also be used to help fight hostile forces, in contrast to the limited spaces of the underwater city of Rapture. The openness of Columbia provides for more dynamic combat, including combat that takes place aboard the city's Skyline roller coaster-like rail system. Downloadable content for the game includes a story-based mission, Burial at Sea, that links Infinite's story to that of the original BioShock game. On the number 4 spot we have the Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead is a series of cooperative first-person shooter survival horror video games developed by Valve, set in the days after a pandemic outbreak of a viral strain transforming people into zombie-like feral creatures. The games follow the adventures of 4 survivors attempting to reach safe houses and military rescue while fending off the attacking hordes. The games encourage cooperative play between up to 4 players, each taking the role of one of the survivor characters and the computer controlling any unassigned characters. Players use a combination of melee weapons, firearms, and thrown objects to fend off attacks from the bulk of the infected creatures, while using an assortment of healing items to keep their group alive. Certain unique infected creatures pose a more difficult challenge, typically requiring teamwork to take down effectively. The games are overseen by an AI director, designed to give the players a more dramatic experience based on their performance, penalizing players for stalling while rewarding players with special weapons by taking longer or riskier paths. The director also makes gameplay dynamic, meaning that no 2 playthroughs are quite the same. On the number 3 spot we have the Payday 2. Payday 2 is a cooperative first-person shooter video game, developed by Overkill Software and published by 505 Games. The game is a sequel to 2011's Payday the Heist. It was released in August 2013 for Windows, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. An improved version of the game subtitled Crime Wave Edition, was released for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in June 2015. A version for the Nintendo Switch was released in February 2018, 2 years after the events of the previous game. The paid-A gang comes to the Washington metropolitan area to perform another sting spree. The player takes control of one of the gang's 21 members and can perform heists alone, or with up to 3 teammates. The player can participate in a variety of heists including but not limited to robberies of banks, shops and armored cars, and producing and distributing narcotics. The game differs on the previous by allowing much more customization of the player aesthetically and gameplay-wise, somewhat improved graphical interface and experience more variety and playability in levels, and has reworked stealth mechanics. On the number 2 spot we have the Spec Ops: The Line. Spec Ops: The Line is a 2012 third-person shooter video game, developed by the German studio 𝐏𝐬𝐴 Development and published by 2K Games. It was released internationally in June 2012 for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. It is the 10th title, as well as a reboot of the Spec Ops series. In the game, players can hide behind cover, vault over obstacles and shoot enemies while utilizing a variety of gadgets. Included with the game is an online multiplayer mode developed separately by Darkside Game Studios, allowing players to engage in both cooperative and competitive gameplay. The player controls Captain Martin Walker, who is sent into a post-catastrophe Dubai with an elite Delta Force team on a recon mission. As the story progresses, Walker's sanity begins to deteriorate as he begins to experience hallucinations and slowly realize the horror of war. 𝐏𝐬𝐴 started the game's development in 2007, taking inspiration for the setting and story framework from various media including Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now. The game was designed to be physically opposing, causing players to question their thoughts about treating war in a video game as entertainment, and tasks players to make a variety of morally ambiguous decisions. The game suffered from multiple delays, and the development team used this time to refine the story and increase the gameplay's pace. The game's soundtrack is a mix of licensed music and original music composed by 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼. Okay, on the number 1 spot we have the Metro Last Light. Metro Last Light is a post-apocalyptic themed first-person shooter video game with stealth and survival horror elements. It was developed by Ukrainian studio 4A Games and published by Deep Silver for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in May 2013, a sequel to the video game Metro 2033. Its story follows Artyom, a young soldier living in the Moscow metro after a devastating nuclear war. Tasked with finding the mysterious Dark Ones, Artyom must venture to different parts of the metro system, and the surface filled with radiated gases and fight against different factions and mutated monsters. The game improves on various gameplay mechanics of 2033 and introduces elements such as weapon customization. Occasionally missions bring the player above ground. Combat alternates between the player fighting mutants and hostile humans. Areas are larger and Last Light compared to 2033, and the game encourages exploration by having multiple routes. The game offers more freedom to players, allowing them to utilize different tactics to combat enemies. It features destructible environments in which certain objects, such as pillars, collapse after being shot. Numerous diary entries written by Artyom, providing additional insight regarding the game's story, are scattered throughout environments for players to collect. As a first-person shooter, Metro Last Light features a variety of firearms, some fictional and some based on real weapons, which the player uses in combat. The game's protagonist, Artyom, also has the ability to kill an enemy directly with his melee weapon. Artyom has 3 weapon slots. Players can put any weapon into these slots without restriction. Players have access to 4 different secondary weapons, including throwing knives, incendiary grenades, and hand grenades. Mutants do not possess weapons and tend to physically attack the player in swarms, while humans fight with the same firearms available to the player. The player can knock out or kill most human enemies instead of shooting them, using stealth to avoid detection, as enemies are inefficient in spotting the player character in darkness. Players can turn off oil lamps and light bulbs to gain an advantage over their opponents in the post-apocalyptic environment. Ammunition is a rare and essential commodity pre-apocalypse. Military-grade ammunition is used as currency. Players can avoid consuming all the valuable currency by using lower-quality bullets made within the metros due to the scarcity of ammunition. A crucial aspect of gameplay is scavenging. The player can loot corpses and the environment for spare ammunition, as well as weapons and other items. The military-grade ammunition can be used to purchase other ammunition, weapons, and items within most of the metro stations. Weapon attachments, such as scopes and silencers, which improve weapon efficiency, can be purchased with these bullets. The game's locations reflect the dark atmosphere of real metro tunnels with added survival horror elements. Paranormal phenomena, such as shadow figures, hallucinations, and unexplained noises are present, and for the most part the player has to rely on their lighter and rechargeable flashlight to navigate the darkness. Location's layout is often intricate and the game lacks any form of map or objective marker, leaving the player to try finding their objectives with only a compass. The surface is more lethal than the metro system, featuring a day-night cycle and a dynamic weather system. These sections are severely irradiated and a gas mask must be worn at all times because of the toxic air. The player must collect air filters for the gas mask. These last several minutes each, and are automatically replaced provided the player has more in reserve. Players also need to wipe off the dirt and blood splatter that collects on the gas mask. There is no head-up display indicator to tell how long the player has until the gas mask's filters begin to fail. Rather, a timer on the character's wristwatch shows how long until the current filter expires. The watch also serves to indicate to a player if they have been exposed to enemy attention with every weapon. The bullets are partly visible, informing the player that their weapon is about to run out of ammunition and they have to reload. Instead of head-up display, the game makes use of audio and visual cues to present information to players. There are certain subtle moral choices in the game that provide karma. Good karma can be acquired by good actions, such as rescuing people from enemy characters, listening to conversations between NPCs, or sparing enemy soldiers. Bad karma can be acquired from evil actions, such as killing people randomly or stealing things. Karma affects the ending that the player experiences. So guys, that's it for today. Make sure to like the video, and don't forget to subscribe the channel. Okay, with all due respect, love your parents, respect your country, keep playing, and keep going, and most importantly, be happy with what you have. Bye.
This is the future.